Hello and welcome back in to Full Tank Truck Talk. I'm your host, Phil Eastman, the host of the Full Tank with Phil podcast, where you can get your Cup Series action wherever you listen to your podcast. But on here, we are talking trucks and excited to do so once again for Atlanta, going to EchoPark Speedway this Saturday. And we are coming back in now for the second race of the Truck Series season here in 2026, officially underway. And the excitement level was up high last week. If you watched last week's episode, we were excited about the Daytona race. Well, we'll get right in here to a recap of Daytona because we had Chandler Smith as your winner. And it was a race that really lived up to expectations. I heard the other night that we had the most watched truck race in like 10 years or something like that. Just an absolutely astronomical number for the ratings, which makes sense to me. Like that was the reason why we were so excited. We felt the energy behind this truck series and everything, all the storylines and everything that we had going and all of the big name drivers dropping down. And it produced. The race was good. It didn't get out of control. Sometimes the truck races can get a little too much with the wrecks and everything like that. Not the case. We had a great race. And from a betting standpoint, we didn't hit big, but we were in the ball game. All three of our outright picks, which were longer odds, were in the top five. We had Gio for plus 2,200, finished second. He really put us in position. Eckes, John Hunter, both of them, up there in the top five. So really giving us a chance at it at the end. I thought John Hunter was going to get it done for us. I thought John Hunter was going to be the one to cash, and he gets knocked out of the way towards the end of that race. But it was fun. It was a fun race. Chandler Smith is your winner, deservingly so. And we cashed the top five on him. So happy about that. I was about plus 220, I believe. So yeah, it was a good, fun race to watch all around. The one thing I was bitter about was our head-to-head. We called out a head-to-head matchup. It was Carson Hocevar and going head-to-head against Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And the reasoning behind that, if the quick elevator pitch behind it was Hocevar, good on super speedways, good in the truck series, and coming back down and making, in my mind, an appearance that should have been kind of dominant. And that did not work out that way. And going up against Ricky Stenhouse, who had never been in a truck before. And so I was, pitting that against Ricky as a negative. And the two things couldn't have been more opposite. Ricky Stenhouse, hats off to him, finishes like top six, I believe, and really worked well out there getting that sixth place finish, whereas Carson Hocevar was spinning every time the the camera came off of the pack. It was watching his truck spin out. So that was a tough one to swallow. I really thought that was going to be a good head-to-head matchup for us, but hey, a fun race altogether, and definitely happy with the way things played out from an entertainment standpoint on Friday night. I was thoroughly impressed by those guys and entertained, and I think it's going to set up a great Truck Series season. So they're laying it out there now for us here in Daytona. Moving on to Atlanta. So I'll get to some of the outright picks here in just a second, but we've got just some things to talk about this track in general. So if you're not familiar with Atlanta, we are going to a racetrack that is drafting style, similar to Daytona, right? That we call that a super speedway. Folks now call Atlanta a like super speedway-esque track, but it's a mile shorter. And they redid this racetrack in 2022. And ever since then, it's been this like Thunderdome type track that generates a lot of great action, a lot of great finishes. So if you're looking back on Truck Series data, there's not really much you should be looking at beyond 2022, which is fine because a lot of these guys haven't been in this series that long anyway. But the fact remains, 2022 and closer is really what we should be focused on because that's when the style of racing changed here. This race will be at 1:30 on Saturday. Qualifying is on Friday at 3 p.m. So if you like some of the bets that you see out there on the books, you're watching this before that time, get those in. You never know what's going to come back up. But after qualifying, you have a long period of time between the end of qualifying and the start of the race, which is Saturday afternoon. They got a doubleheader with the O'Reilly Series in Atlanta on Saturday, but there's no practice. So no Truck Series practice, no practice in the Cup Series either. So you're going to have to deal with that. And these drivers, especially the younger drivers, going to have to deal with not having much practice there at this track. We have stages of 30 laps, and 65 laps in this one for a total of 135 laps at this 1.5-mile track. And then just some other, news and notes, other drivers that are jumping into this one this week. Well, if you're going in number order, the number one truck going to be run by none other than Corey Heim. So we'll talk about Corey in just a bit. The number 5 Tricon is going to be run by Adam Andretti, which is a pretty big motorsports name. The 25 run last week by Tony Stewart, followed up. They're making this a free agent type truck. And big name drivers. Who do they have following up this week? It is Ty Dillon. So back into the Truck Series, riding in for Spire for Colleague and Ram. Whew, what am I thinking there? So Ty Dillon there filling into the 25 truck. And we've got Ricky Stenhouse back in the 45. So we'd like to see that. We have John Hunter back in the 62. So we'd like to see that as well. And then Carson Hocevar in the 77 again. So some big names yet again going, to another drafting super speedway type track. I think we're due for another big entertaining day here for the Truck Series. So I hope you're excited like I am. Now there's a strategy to this because there's a name that I left off on purpose. Okay. There's a name that I left off the entry list for a reason. And it's because it changes the way that I am approaching this from a gambling standpoint this week, because I'm straight up shook looking at the board. The first name, and we'll go to our outright section here. It's Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is racing in this race, and he is plus 275. Now, here's what I'm going to say about this. Kyle Busch is dominant at this racetrack. And I was mentioning, how they redone this track, stats before 2022, you can kind of throw those away. He has shown that in a truck, it doesn't matter what this track looks like. He is damn good. He's so dominant. And plus 275, honestly, it's a steal. So we'll go through kind of some of these stats and then talk about the way to play this. But in a truck, since the repave or the reconfiguration of this track, he's 2 for 2, winning the whole damn race. He has raced at this track 15 times. He has 8 wins in a truck. That is insane. So there were, it's been a little while now, but there was a time where when Kyle Busch raced in a truck, it was like an automatic victory. His number to win outright was like minus money. That wasn't too far back. That was like 2022 time frame. I think it was 2022 when like Zane Smith won at Daytona, and then they went to Vegas, and those two battled. Yeah. Anytime Kyle used to hop in a truck, he was kick ass. Last year, it wasn't that serious. It wasn't as dominant, but guess what? He won this race last year. So it's very worth your time. If you're thinking about an outright, it's either Kyle Busch and nothing, or you play like longer shot guys for very tiny sprinkles. Okay. This is not a track, or this is not a race for the trucks where I think it's worth playing like Busch and then a few other guys of like equal unit allocation. I think you really have to make your mind up. Like if you want to play Busch, then that's kind of what you got to do. And I am sort of taking that similar approach, because what we'll see is there are top 5 value on drivers that may win. They could win, right? We don't know what we're going to get with Kyle Busch in 2026 in a truck. I know what history tells us, but it doesn't necessarily mean every single time that he's going to go out and win. He has done that a lot. But in the top 5 market, we're going to see some value on guys that are very feisty, are very frisky. And, we'll talk about them one by one. So that's up to you. You got to make your decision. Like, is Kyle Busch the way you want to play it, and then play a bunch of top 5s? That's kind of what I'm doing, with this one. Now, I will say with one exception. And in the finishing position, or excuse me, in the finish line segment, I'll throw some other names out there kind of willy nilly if you're looking to play some longer shot guys. There's some names that you could throw out there. But there's another driver that, from an outright perspective, is just too juicy to lay off. And Corey Heim. Let me level set here with you. A year ago, or even just call it half a year ago, when you're at Atlanta Motor Speedway and you see Corey Heim's name on the board, you think you're seeing plus 750? You think you're seeing plus 600? No, he is down there with the Kyle Busch range, the plus 275 range. What has changed? His number on his car. It's the same garage. Instead of driving, they're taking a 1 off. He'll be faster. There's less digits on the side of his car, right? He's not in the 11. He's in the 1. That's it. I mean, you could give me all this about pit crew, but pit crews for the Truck Series are, hodgepodge anyway, because they're just Cup Series guys jumping in for the most part. So it's the same garage, same company at Tricon. He's just jumping in and he's driving, one of these all-star trucks. It is mind-boggling to me that he is plus 750. And he originally, when I first pulled up the apps, he was 8-1. And I was like, what? What is happening? I wanted to jump on YouTube like right away so I didn't miss out on being able to talk about it. Best I see right now is plus 750 on Caesars. He's like that on Bet365, 7-1 on folks like DraftKings or Bovada or one of those. But yeah, I mean, you can get Corey Heim. Even I think the score had him at like 6-1. 6-1 is still crazy. Like it's wild that like we forget that quickly that this dude won 12 races last year. He is solid, just a solid choice no matter where you go. It does not matter what racetrack you're on. Corey Heim is going to give you a chance to win. So in 2024, he finished 3rd, starting 19th. Last year, after quote unquote winning at Daytona, I remember he crossed the stripe 2nd. Kligerman got disqualified. He comes and backs it up with a 23rd place finish, but he still ran really well in that race. He had a true performance rank in that race of 80.16, which is, towards the top of the board in that stat. So yeah, he is a solid driver. We talked about his super speedway prowess last year on this show. So it's just like anytime you see Corey Heim in the trucks, you have to give it a look. If he was 3-1, we probably wouldn't be talking about him because it wouldn't be worth it. But you have a chance to get him here. I think it's worth a half unit or so to play this one because you don't have to put that much money into it to get something back. So Corey Heim, man, I'll tell you, he's seeing this number, and this is a disrespectful number by all the books. There's no book out there that has shown that they have learned from history. So, yeah, just wild there that he is that long. All right, let's move into the placement picks here because this is where we can have some fun conversations because looking at the stats for Atlanta, there are so many drivers in this short amount of time since, 2022 that have shown that they're A, decent on super speedways, but B, have good finishes here. And it's tough to kind of distinguish between some of these bigger name guys. And it really is the bigger names of the sport that are good here. So that's why this one is gearing up to be very fun on Saturday afternoon. Just a good matinee there on Saturday. So first place we're going to go is right back to the well, and it is Chandler Smith. So he was our winner last week. We hit this bet, the same exact bet, plus 220, top 5 last week at Daytona. we're getting the same exact odds this week. And I did a little digging because in the Cup Series, the Daytona winner, the subsequent race since 2022, has an average finish of like really bad. It's like 23.7 or something like that. Really bad number. I did that for the Truck Series, and I don't have the exact number, but it was almost not worth doing it because they did not. It was the opposite. They did not struggle. They were able to do well. Now there was a couple of ones that like Heim last year at a 23rd, but we've seen top fives, top sixes a couple times here in the subsequent race, including racing at Atlanta. So I'm not nervous of any sort of hangover here. Is the purpose of all of those comments with Chandler Smith. And he is absolutely someone that could go win this race again. Atlanta is a racetrack where you're going to need more handling in the car, and it's more driver oriented than, say, a Daytona or Talladega. And so Chandler Smith fits the billing here. He's got 2 top fives since the start of the 2022 season. He finished 5th here last year. And starting positions, I don't really consider them something that matters all that much. I mean, he started 28th last year in the Cup Series. I did a lot of digging into the starting positions for those guys, and it really just doesn't seem to matter. You've got certain trucks geared up for qualifying trim, and others are in race trim. So they'll start further back, and guys like Chandler Smith are able to get towards the front. He had a 5th place finish here last year, and that should be enough to give you an indication like, okay, he was just getting back into it last year. He's only got 3 starts here in his career. In 2021, before they reconfigured it, he won the pole and finished 35th. So he got into some trouble late. But then in 2022, before he left for bigger and brighter things, he won the pole and then finished 4th. So his last 2 finishes here are 4th and 5th. That's exactly what we're looking for out of Chandler Smith here for plus 220. That's on Bet365. So, Chandler Smith, go do it again, pal. Keep it up. I mean, he's really starting the season strong. Best you can do. Top 5 here would be great for him. Great for us. We'll see how that works out. So then we'll move to our next top 5 and another driver who's very strong at this track, and it's Caden Honeycutt. So I mentioned Corey Heim not being in the 11. Well, Caden Honeycutt is in the 11, and Caden Honeycutt is someone that is going to have a lot of eyes on him until he really starts, poking through there. He finished 8th in that race last week at Daytona. He started 7th, so he ran a good race. Led 1 lap, picked up some points, and did what he needed to do. Now he's going to a racetrack where with Nice, he's run twice and he's finished 6th both times. All right. So now you're going from a 6th place back to back to a new team that has race winning capabilities. Not that Nice can't, but the 11 truck is proven. I think he could get over this hurdle and cash a top 5 for us. I'm not asking him to win the race. He could. A sprinkle on Honeycutt. Absolutely. I could see that. But back-to-back 6th in a better team on paper, I think he can get this done for us and keep it clean. So, that's all we need with these guys is let the dudes in the back, the inexperienced guys have the trouble. I think we're going to see the cream rise to the top like it did at Daytona. And Honeycutt should be up there as long as he doesn't get caught in somebody else's stuff. So plus 250, we're getting these elongated odds here because it is a super speedway style track. I'll take it. Bet365, by the way, haven't talked about it yet. You've seen them on here a couple times on the graphic. They've got the best odds for finishing positions that I've seen out of all of them. Now, plus 250 is monstrous for Caden Honeycutt, but hopefully if you don't have Bet365, I'm just trying to put information out there for you to be able to take and absorb and make your own decisions on with the books that you have available to you. But yeah, he is definitely someone that should be on your mind heading into this weekend, because this could be a breakout party for him with Corey Heim in the race. I mean, imagine if he were to go and win in the 11 truck against Heim, like that would be a big time. Yep, I'm here, and this is my truck now. So that would be pretty wild to see that break down. All right, we're also going to go back to someone who is in a Toyota, and it's Gio Ruggiero. All right, plus 400 on Bet365 for a top 5 finish. Now, I saw him as low as like plus 250 on DraftKings. I still don't hate the plus 250 play, but to get him 4-1, you don't even have to spend that much money to make money here. And Gio Ruggiero, I don't know what's going on, even after last week. We spoke about him last week. By the way, he's still plus 2,200 to win this race, just like he was last week. We took him at that number last week. It just missed. His finishes on super speedways, Daytona, Talladega, Daytona. Okay. First, second, and third. What? Not in that order, but like insane. And then you loop in, okay, how did he do last year at Atlanta? Because he only has one race in Atlanta. And he started 22nd, he finished 11th. So, and that was after a third place finish at Daytona the previous week. Now he finishes second at Daytona. He's got a full season in trucks under his belt. He's really starting to shine. He's going to be running in the Xfinity race as well. I found that out through a couple of my buddies, Chris and Derek. So he'll be, getting seat time. I know they're not practicing, but he'll be qualifying for both of those. So he'll be getting some track time. I love that for such a young driver, and I love that for a driver that is good on super speedways. So an 11th place finish last year, yeah, obviously that wouldn't cash, but I think for all those reasons, right, the momentum that he has, the success that he's had on the bigger tracks, an 11th place finish is not too shabby in your rookie season. Getting back into it, let's go. Gio 4-1, Bet365 for a top 5. I don't know why we're not seeing. I'll keep saying this. I don't know why we're getting these long odds on Gio, but I guess maybe he'll be our best kept secret until he wins a race and then he gets duped. We'll take it, right? Why wouldn't we? I really enjoy it. I want head-to-head matchups on with Gio. That's what I really wanted opening the books up this week. I don't see him, but because he's just not at that echelon yet. But we'll take a top 5 play here and hope for the best out of the young kid. All right, so now we will move into the matchups segment, and I only got one yet again. One matchup. It didn't work out last week. I thought I had the right reasoning behind it, but last time I was taking 2 guys that aren't regulars. Now, this time I am taking 2 guys that are regulars, and I absolutely love this matchup. There was a matchup in the Cup Series that I am in love with on Sunday. This is one that I absolutely can't get over on Saturday. Ty Majeski over Grant Enfinger at minus 115. This is on Bet365, and I believe it's on Bovada as well if you have access to that. This is, to me, a mismatch. All right. And I love Grant Enfinger. People that listen to my shows in the past know that he is my favorite truck driver. But sometimes you got to put the fandom aside and roll with it here. Majeski is absolutely dominant over Enfinger here at this track. So we'll get into it here. We'll start with Enfinger. Okay. He, at a point in time in his career, used to love coming to Atlanta. Absolutely used to love this racetrack. And then he was somebody that probably did not like the repave, because listen to these finishes before the repave. Okay. 5, 8, 9, 3, 1, 11. Like a win and 5 top 5s, 6 top 11s. That's awesome. That's a track that you can mark on your calendar at the beginning of the year and be like, yep, we're going to be good there. Can't wait for that track. Since the repave, 12, 19, 25, and 10th, all of which starting inside the top 10. Now, 12 and 10 are not bad finishes, but for someone who was so good here with all of those top tens, including a win, always a threat, that's not going to get done. And so I see that, and I see someone that is vulnerable in a head-to-head matchup. So you start looking at the books, and I'm seeing him up against guys like Lane Riggs. Okay, that's not a matchup that I typically want. Riggs, I can't put my finger on this week. I'm not going to be talking about him all that much. I would lean towards Riggs maybe, but he's been very like wishy-washy on the super speedway. So like, that's not going to work. Where else can I play him? Just couldn't really find anything. And so I open up Bet365 and he's going up against Ty Majeski. And I had already written some notes down about Majeski, and I immediately said, "Yep, that's the one. That's the one we're going to go with here," because Ty Majeski on this racetrack since the repave has 3 top 10 finishes. He's 4 for 4 finishing inside the top 15. I mean, that is exactly what you want. That's what you want, the type of resume you would want for a race winning pick, an outright pick. Okay? Let alone a pick that you're looking to do a head-to-head matchup with. That's perfect. That's exactly the style that I'm looking for. His last 4 finishes at Atlanta since 2022: 3rd, 11, 2, 8. Say less. Say less. He is a factor. He was, someone who was a factor last week. He never went away last week in the Daytona race. Finished 4th in that race. Started on the pole. We know from breaking him down last week a little bit that he is someone that is good on super speedways. So yeah, this is a great like fireball worth of stuff here to be like, okay, I could get behind a Ty Majeski top 5. Yeah, no problem. Wait, hold on. He only has to beat one driver, and that driver has been mid pack here. Okay, let's lock in. Oh, and they're even odds. Lock it down. Lock it down. Ty Majeski over Grant Enfinger. If these guys run straight to the finish with no trouble hitting their cars or anything like that, this should be an easy win for us. So, Bet365, thank you for putting this matchup out there. I will take it. All right, so we're kind of landing the plane here a little bit. We will get to our one and done pick here in just a second, but just as promised, wanted to throw just a couple things out there for the finish line. Some long shot guys. So if you came here looking for some names of drivers that would make sense just to have a little fun with, just to sprinkle some coffee money, some beer money on, there are some out there. I'll rip off some names that I was discussing with some of my friends yesterday. We'll go back to the John Hunter Nemechek well. 14-1 out there on some books. Not too bad. I mean, he's driving that 62 again. He made a really good run last week at Daytona. This is more of a handling style track, so maybe the fact that the 62 isn't as good of a truck could play a little bit more of a factor than, say, Daytona, where you get just a huge run with the pack. But it's still drafting, so he is a factor. 14-1 for John Hunter. Yeah, I could see that. Christian Eckes, definitely could see Christian Eckes in the mix again. We talked about him last week, took him last week. He finished in his last time out here 33rd. So, and that was starting 5th. That was his last time in the Truck Series, but he has had success. I mean, he's had a win here at Atlanta and 2 top 5s in his history here. So in 2023, started 4th, finished 1st, and then a 16th place finish in 2022. So he's kind of hit or miss, but for 14-1, it's take it. I'd be more maybe interested in a top 5 for him. Like I said, you might have to assume Kyle's going to win this race. So then it's about, all right, well, how can we make money on some of these names? But again, if you're just looking to sprinkle and have some of these guys on the field, Justin Haley, 16-1. We talked about him in my text chain with my buddies. And I'm not, in love with Justin Haley, other than the fact that I know that he's had good runs here in the Cup Series. So we've seen him do well enough to where it like, gets your attention a little bit. But so it could be worth a sprinkle there. And then if you want to go really far out, Daniel Hemrick, Tyler Ankrum, both 35 to 1, driving McAnally trucks. Absolutely. I mean, they could, without a doubt, do some damage. There's nothing that would stop me from, like, if you were to say like, hey, could they win the race? Yeah, they definitely could win the race. Hemrick started third here last year. He ends up 16th. He was in the race. I believe he did take some damage, but anybody in a McAnally truck could do some damage here. We've got Tyler Ankrum with a top 5 here, 2 top 10s, 3 top 15s, 11.8 average finish. I mean, Ankrum at 35 to 1. Sure. Sure. All it takes is something to happen up front with Kyle. And yeah, these 35 numbers, all of a sudden, you get some real value out of them. So yeah, absolutely, those guys could be a factor in this race. It's just, is it their day? But I could see any of those guys. If they were in victory lane, would I be shocked? Absolutely not. So that is where we'll go there. And then we are doing a one and done this year. I mentioned it last week. I'll mention it every week with the guys from the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, Rod and Cody. Cody was a guest on the other YouTube show that I do, The Draft, on Wednesday nights at 8:30 with Ryan Stevens and Tino Patino, run by Win the Race. And so Cody joined us this week as a guest, and it was very fun. Well, the guys on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, they put out a Truck Series show every week. They put out a ton of content. So if you're into gambling or DFS in NASCAR, which I assume you are, you got to give them a look. Well, we're picking one driver each week, going head to head against each other for the season. I'll try to share my screen here for a second. I'll take this away and we'll toss this up here. See if this screws everything up. So there we go. I had John Hunter last week, and I listened to their show after the fact, and John Hunter was their backup driver if Stenhouse didn't make the race somehow. They took Stenhouse. They finished 5th and 6th. So John Hunter grabbed 10 stage points. So I was lucky enough to grab a little bit of a bonus there, but they finished right next to each other. And I think Rod texted us and said, it's almost like we know what we're doing there. Kind of fun. So that's the look after race number 1. Who am I going with this week? I will be taking the easy way out, and I have not heard what they have done yet, but I'm suspicious that we might be on the same driver this week. We'll see. I'm going with Kyle Busch. I know that we might get Kyle later in the year driving trucks, but this is proven to be his playground, and I want to cash in early on a victory if I can. And if he goes out and he lays an egg, okay, that's fine. Especially if they take Kyle as well, it'll be, very stress-free for the one and done. But I'm taking a shot here on a driver that is very good, that I know we're going to see a bunch more in the Truck Series this year, but I'm using him early because I think that this track is exactly what he loves, and he's going to go 3 for 3 in trucks on the new configured Atlanta. So that's how we're wrapping things up this week on Full Tank Truck Talk. So, I appreciate everybody for joining us this week. Really excited and pumped about this truck's season. So hopefully everyone has a good racing weekend in Atlanta. Hopefully take this information, use it to your advantage, win a little money, and I will see you next week as the Truck Series rolls on. So thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.